So, you have right now, as you alluded to, the collapse in this 200-year bull market in the bonds. And we're seeing this flame out spectacularly in the FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried catastrophe, where people are beginning to realize how everything was collateralized by everything else. And so that whole, Ponzi scheme, a hologram of Ponzi schemes are evaporating.
Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Talk Crypto. In this episode, we have Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert of the Orange Pill podcast, talking about the 200-year downtrend of the fiat world and the FTX Ponzi scheme, as opposed to what's happening in El Salvador, where they moved into when it adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. They compare all the FUD against El Salvador by the Main Street media, who has called it a failed experience, to the early days of Bitcoin. Let's listen to Max and Stacy as they discuss what happened in 2022 and send out an important message to all Bitcoiners. But before we do, please consider subscribing to our channel, as we bring you daily content on the latest crypto news. And now, let's jump right into the video.
As a journalist, I feel compelled to be here to report on it because it's this is the tip of the spear for the Bitcoin revolution. And we're seeing it happen in real time on the ground. And it's interesting that the perception still lags reality. So you still have the mainstream press reporting on El Salvador in ways that are, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years out of date. And in that gap, a lot of people are moving here, entrepreneurs and young families looking for a new beginning. And they're taking advantage of that arbitrage between what's the facts on the ground and the way it's being reported.
It makes total sense, Max, because
Yeah.
it's the opposite of the fiat world,
Right.
where we've had 200-year bull market in bonds, right? So interest rates kept declining for 200 years, debt kept blossoming for 200 years, and we're at the end of that. So it makes sense at the same time somebody was having to pay for it somewhere, right? The third world was paying for it, whether it was Africa or Asia or Latin America, was paying for that bond bubble for the past 200 and something years.
Right.
So now you've had, especially in the last 40, 50 years, where like the ultimate bottom, right? That was the sell-off.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It has been a 200-year downtrend. If you look at the fiat money world, the introduction of central banks, the Bank of England and all the subsequent central banks, and how they dominated the globe with their fiat money Ponzi schemes, and that bubble burst, and now we're seeing the rise of those economies and countries that were the client states of those central banks, and the result is a complete reversal. And the market is not recognizing this, and but for a few Sharpies that are moving in and taking advantage of this complete reversal.
I get really pissed off when I see that FUD. On one level, I get pissed off. And on one level, I'm pissed off that, all the FUD about El Salvador failing and Bloomberg's and the Financial Times sort of publications that are the prison guards for the fiat system, right? They're the propagandists for that fiat fraud. On the other hand, we're at the beginning of this new Renaissance 2.0. We're still so early, right? Just like with Bitcoin, the amount of FUD used to be like extraordinary 12 years ago. It was really just all negative, all like drug dealers. It was Silk Road. It was like for bad guys. It was evil. At least now, there are senators who put laser eyes on and stuff like that. There was none of that back then, but those were the very, very early days. And same here in El Salvador. It's like getting into Bitcoin in 2011.
Despite all the progress Bitcoin has made, regarding public opinion and adoption rate, Max and Stacy believe that we're still very early in the Bitcoin revolution, and that El Salvador represents the Bitcoin singularity. Being on the ground themselves, they've been able to evaluate what's really going on, and debunk what they consider to be lies that the media has been publishing about the country throughout the years. But all of that is coming to an end, as Max alludes to next.
So, you have right now, as you alluded to, the collapse in this 200-year bull market in the bonds. And we're seeing this flame out spectacularly in the FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried catastrophe, where people are beginning to realize how everything was collateralized by everything else. So he purchased Robinhood, for example, the online trading app, by borrowing money against one set of collateral that was collateralized by a fake scam token that was collateralized by a loan that was rehypothecated from a hedge fund. And so that whole Ponzi scheme, a hologram of Ponzi schemes are evaporating, and into that mix comes a country like El Salvador with a Bitcoin standard that is now representing, as you call it, Renaissance 2.0, and it's hard to measure exactly beyond the simple GDP measure. But I think in 2023 we will start to see what that means sociologically with the population. If you are a Bitcoiner, you need to visit, for one thing, you need to visit El Salvador and see what it's like to have a Bitcoin standard, a Bitcoin is legal tender, and an orange-pilled president, and a population that is completely aware of it. The adoption rate here, what I say, it's 100%, because everyone is aware of it, and once you become aware of it, you are changed by it. We say that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And that can happen just by thinking about it, because if you're thinking about an absolutely scarce synthetic digital commodity that is replacing all previous forms of money going back hundreds of thousands of years to give us perfect money, perfect transactions, and a seamless interconnectivity, and the liberation of the collective unconscious, you see that we are on the cusp of what we would call the Bitcoin singularity. And it's happening right here. The portal into the Bitcoin singularity is probably underneath one of these volcanoes. I go out there every morning and I search for it. And I go up volcanoes and I climb them and I look for the portal into the Bitcoin singularity, because I know it's here. And we're making a little film about that right now. I'm seeking a producer for that. But it's the Bitcoin search for the Bitcoin singularity through the jungles of El Salvador.
Max and Stacy seem to have been living the life in El Salvador, while watching the fiat world crumble in despair. So, what are they looking forward to in 2023?
It's just weird that I occasionally get interrupted by all the good things happening here with some news from the outside world popping through on Twitter, where you see just horrible stuff. All of the shitcoin collapses, all of them. And it's just like so many people we know just got involved in these shitcoins, like the whole FTX thing, like Celsius, all these people who are trapped with their funds lost that, they should have known better than to chase that yield. In the fiat world, that's how you die, right? Like that's how your wealth dies, is chasing yield like that. Well, they all died doubly because it was also shitcoinery, right? Seeing the extreme breakdown of society in the United States, and despair. Here it went from despair to hope, right?
The basic American character is one of neighborly kind of respect, if you will, and a certain egalitarianism. And these big corporations are constantly taking advantage of that. It could be the banking industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or any of these industries. They're constantly just taking advantage of the basic American kind-heartedness to rip them off. And they're just going to kill the golden goose. They're just not going to run out of middle-class Americans to rip off. And then what?
I'm saying, I'm preparing for good times for 2023. I know there's a lot of good stuff happening in the first 6 months of the year. I've seen it myself, and I know it's coming. And, we'll get to that, the volcano top.
Both Keiser and Saylor have said many times that the collapse of these crypto scams is necessary to clean up the space and help people understand the difference between Bitcoin and other cryptos. 2022 was definitely a rough year for Bitcoin and crypto, with so many investors losing their money in the market, but all is not lost as the industry matures and investors become more knowledgeable of the space. Do you think we'll see a rebound in the market in 2023? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. This is Let's Talk Crypto, and we'll see you in the next video.